Oh.
Wow, he took a long time before spiking it. Took 3 steps on the drop back.
Oh, my Lord. Tyler Van Dyke, what are you doing?
And Mike Norvell seems to be indicating should be 0 time left.
He took a 3-step drop and spiked it.
Yeah.
By rule, in order for the quarterback to spike the ball, there has to be 3 seconds on the clock. There were 2. Therefore, the ball game is over.
Oh, my Lord.
What an inglorious ending for the Hurricanes.
And the Seminoles say less.
Yes, sir. Welcome back. If you were looking at this face and listening to this voice, you were tuned in to the best kept secret of sports talk. I'm your friendly neighborhood smoking. You are officially on the hot seat. What we do on the hot seat? Say it with me. We set somebody's ass on fire. We bringing Florida State back to the hot seat, man. We're going to discuss the thrilling, exhilarating victory they had Saturday evening over the University of Coral Gables Hurricanes. So, without any further ado, man, paying homage to the ghost to my left and my right, I know why you're here. You come for the gospel, and I'm going to give it to you. Ding, ding, classes in session. So, like I already mentioned, Florida State beat the University of Coral Gables. I think it was 31-28. And, man, when you think about where the program was last year at the time they played in Miami versus where they are right now, it's not like Florida State has just grown. They've grown, but they aren't just leaps and bounds better than what they were. But, man, you remember coming out of that game, and I was asking myself, how many more teams in the country are worse than Florida State? Wasn't a lot. And then you ask that question now, and it's not the same answer. You don't have the same feeling. Like, I think a few times in Mike Norvell's tenure, he's given us things to be happy about, but nothing to really be proud of. And I think those are 2 different things. I think when you look at the way the game went, how hard that team fought, how a lot of times you see that team curl up in the corner like a bitch when things go badly, and they didn't. They kept fighting. There were times in which mistakes were made, and they didn't point their fingers. They kept fighting. They stayed the course. And now I've said this before about Mike Norvell, coach football teams. Gutting the roster, getting rid of guys who probably shouldn't have been in the on the team in the locker room. Looking at the roster as it is right now, it's a lot of young guys, a lot of guys Mike Norvell picked. These guys fight. He's instilled in them the will to keep going when you face adversity, because one of the most important characteristics a person can have, let alone a team, is strength of character. And you only judge strength of character by how many times a person gets up. Not necessarily by how many times they get knocked down, but how many times they get back up. Florida State has gotten up. Knees were probably wobbly, probably had blood in their eyes, but they keep getting up. And what you saw Saturday evening was a prime example of it. I want to take a moment because I give y'all the gospel. I tell y'all the truth, or at least my opinion. And as I've said before, especially here recently, my opinion isn't driven by any powers that be or any sponsors. I just say what I say. I have been critical of Mike Norvell, not overly critical, just critical. I think it's just critical. But if I'm going to criticize him in public, I have to praise him in public as well. I think there have been times this season where Mike Norvell's decision-making has cost Florida State some football games. Not Saturday evening. There are a few things I can point to. And I'm not saying the game went crisp. I'm not saying every decision he made I agree with, but I've told you all before, I don't aspire to agree with a head coach every game. But you can probably say, and if you said it, I'd agree with it. There are some decisions he made that won Florida State this football game. He's done some head-scratching shit, and sometimes you tied to analytics. Sometimes you tied to a gut feeling. I didn't get too much of that this game. And what that has shown me is growth. It's shown me that he's growing as a head coach. A lot of people said, especially this season, when he got the gig, he was in over his head, and it showed. You're probably right. I probably would agree with you at one point, but I think right now, as the football team is growing, as a head coach, we're seeing Mike Norvell grow, right? And it's not just, growing and learning on the job. It's learning from your mistakes. In life, you have mistakes and you have fuck-ups. Fuck-ups are the things you do continually, and you don't really care about the ramifications of it, right? You keep bumping your head and you're not stopping. Well, a mistake is something you do, you learn from it, and you adjust moving forward. We saw Mike Norvell do that Saturday evening. That's what I'm proud of. That's what you want to see in the head coach. You want leadership. You want leadership that you can believe in, leadership that you can trust. So when these guys go out there, you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they may not be the most talented bunch, but at the very least, they're well coached, they're disciplined, and they're going to fight. That'll keep you in a lot of football games. I've been critical over staff moves and things like that, and what I did see, I'm not going to go as far as saying this is one of the best games I've seen that offensive line play, but for the 5 guys who they probably wanted out there to start the season, those 5 guys were out there Saturday evening. They probably aren't healthy, but who is healthy around this time of the season? But some of those guys are really banged up. They play very well. Who's their coach? Alex Atkins. Who found Alex Atkins? Who brought him to Florida State? Mike Norvell. Decision making. You made the decision to go find an offensive line coach who nobody had heard of. You brought him here. He's probably your best recruiter, and he's doing what he can with a bunch that's beat up and not very talented. And for the most part, Miami has a pretty good defensive front four. They had their times, they had their moments, but as a group, they didn't perform badly. I don't pay attention to PFF scores and how they grade out and all the other bullshit because I don't understand how the fuck you compute that for offensive linemen. But just looking at what I saw, Robert Scott looked horrible last week. He looked night and days better. Night and day. I attribute that to coaching. Watching film, critiquing little things, understanding assignments, things of that nature. Robert Scott, it was one person who I thought played extremely better than what he did last week. Maurice Smith as well. So, again, if I'm going to criticize a guy in public, I got to praise him in public. Mike Norvell is growing as a head coach, and that's something we should all pay attention to and keep track of. Speaking of keeping track of it, can't take another step backwards. You've heard me preach about this season. You have a grand opportunity. I'm not talking about making the bowl. I didn't predict them to make a bowl when the season started. I don't care about that right now. I'm saying when you go into Boston College, what is this football team going to look like? You, as a head coach, it's your job to ensure there is no hangover. Okay, great win. It's time to go back to work. No lack of days to go practices. Nobody full of themselves. Nobody feeling too good. Nobody acting like we're on top of the world. It's time to get back to work. We are still a 4-6 football team who is trying to become a 5-6 football team. You go up there, you go to Boston College, and you handle your business. Boston College is a decent football team. Miami is a decent football team. Florida, I don't know what the fuck Florida is. I know what I thought they were, but shit. But again, I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves. Florida is 2 weeks away, I believe. So let's focus on this one game. I want to see what this team looks like at Boston College. It is very, very, very important that this team comes out and looks like what they looked like, well, for the most part, what they looked like Saturday evening. They can't go out there and lay a fucking egg. And like I kept saying last week, something has to give. Something gave. The team started to believe in each other. The coaches started believing in the players. We've seen the bits and pieces of that throughout the season. It's time to string that together. You understand? It's time to put together a football team that's, there's going to be some consistency behind it. Like, you want to get up on a Saturday morning, turn on the Florida State football game, and know what football team you're getting. When was the last time you can truly say that in a positive manner? There were times in which you had an idea of what you were going to get the last 2 to 3 years, maybe even 4 years, but you didn't quite know, right? What is the identity of this football team? Well, you're trending in that direction. Keep the steam on that boat going. It is very, very, very important that you go out there, you go up there to Boston College, and you look like something, not even something, is a high resemblance of what you saw Saturday evening. I remember tweeting that against Clemson, Clemson did everything they could to give their game to Florida State, and Florida State just didn't want it. They didn't want to win the damn game. Didn't happen Saturday. That's the team growing right in front of our eyes. That's the team growing. That's the team. You see the little moves Mike Norvell and the staff are making on both sides of the football as it relates to personnel, plugging in certain players, getting players more playing time because these players aren't playing well, things that we've been clamoring for and asking for and begging for the past few weeks. You look at the cornerbacks, you look at the safeties. There are guys who are playing more now than they did prior to, I say last week, prior to last weekend. They're performing well. Let's keep that type of decision making on the uptick. Let's make sure that we are making those type of decisions moving forward, being proactive and not being reactive. Because I understand the game setting is vastly different from what you see in practice, but practice should tell you. Some of the things that we've been hearing about Amari Cooper and Kevin Knowles, we've been hearing all season in practice, right? But we saw very little to none of them to start the season, middle of the season, but now they get more playing time. You have to assert yourself more in the decision-making process. You have to be more assertive in the decision-making process to make sure you're getting the best product on the field that you can. Why wait so late to play those guys, right? Let's see more of that. The guys who deserve to play need to play. And before I move on to the next segment, how many times I got to say this? Somebody send this clip to Mike Norvell. Somebody send this clip to Coach Pap. Stop changing punt returners. Stop changing punt returners. You're having these issues because you keep pulling in and sending out. Stop. Find one. Coach up that one. Let that one get some experience, continued experience. When you realize that person isn't the one for the job, then you switch. You don't switch punt returners every week, 2 and 3 punt returners a game. It's going to blow up in your face. You keep doing that shit. And it's not like it already hasn't. I'm just saying you are continually shooting yourself in the foot by doing this. Find one. Coach the shit out of that punt returner. Get him some reps, some live reps, and live with that one. Unless he's just terrible and you got the wrong one, then fine. You don't find out you have the wrong one during the second punt return of the game. You don't, okay? Stop doing that shit. Recruiting. Whoo! Man. You ever, like when you were younger, your mother ever tell you don't show out in front of company? Don't act up in front of company. We're going to go in this store and you make sure you act right. Don't be acting crazy like you ain't got no home training. That's what I was saying to myself before the game started. Just don't shit the bed. Don't show out in front of company. You know what I'm saying? Don't get out there and make us look bad in front of all these kids. Because there was so many kids there, so many top targets, even kids that I didn't even know were on Florida State's radar, and vice versa. And to come out there and have an atmosphere reminiscent of what you saw when we played Notre Dame, to go out there and look good as they did, and some of the stars on the team showing out people. That's the biggest draw I took from the game. Not just you see the team and the coach grow up or growing up in front of our eyes. It's the fact that, as they say, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmy and Joes. I think it's about both, but you can't have one without the other. I've been saying this shit for the better part of 2 or 3 years. There needs to be an infusion of talent here at Florida State. And, man, there was a lot of talent at that game. You think back to the Oklahoma game in 2011. You think about the recruits that were at that game. You think about guys like Jeff Luck and how guys like LaMarcus Joyner made it cool to go to Florida State again, right? And no disrespect to that class. You look at the 2011 class, and to me, again, no disrespect to that LaMarcus Joyner class, but that 2011 class is the one that really, truly laid the foundation for Florida State to get back to the promised land, to get back to prominence. That class had a lot of, it was a lot of meat on the bone in that class, a lot. Meaning, when I say meat on the bone, I mean they did a lot of the groundwork. I think a lot of the groundwork was laid when that class came to campus. And you look at the 2013 National Championship game, look how many people you saw on the field from that 2011 class, right? That's the feeling I got. That the Oklahoma Florida State game. That's the feeling I got because Florida State was probably like fifth in the country when Oklahoma came to town that year and they were number one. I didn't really expect to beat them. I remember the game like it was yesterday. Didn't really expect them to beat them, especially when EJ went down. But you saw how the stadium was rocking when Clay Trickett hit Rashard Green going down the sideline. You look at the impression, and at that age, kids are impressionable, right? You look at how since then you've had kids like Marvin Wilson, the 5-star defensive tackle. You've had kids like Cam Akers, a 5-star running back. You've had a lot of kids say that they came to Florida State. They came to Florida State, and the environment is one of the things that drew them to the program. That's what you saw when Notre Dame came to town. That's what you saw yesterday. The environment, the electricity, and the atmosphere. All of that is reminiscent of what Jimbo did when he was here and when he was dialed in, when he was truly engaged, the recruiting classes he built. And at some point, something has to switch. That switch is this recruiting class. And for a team to look as bad as Florida State has looked, for a team to have the worst loss in program history, for the team to only win 3 games last season, they have a top 15 recruiting class, which only stands to get better because of what you saw last night. That was a make or break football team for our recruiting class, and I'm telling you, this is going to be one of those classes. This is going to be a 2011 class for Florida State. It's just that talented at key positions of need. While I'm sitting here praising and singing Mike Norvell's praises, what he and that staff has done to keep the majority of this class together is nothing short of remarkable, and I mean nothing. They've lost a few. Some you probably knew they were going to lose. Kind of hard to pull kids out of Mississippi, man. It really is, for reasons I won't get into on this show. But kind of had a feeling Trayon Williams was going to go even when he committed. I get it. But for the most part, all of those kids stayed together. All those kids weathered the storm. And what that has shown me is the message they were giving to those kids weren't we were going to win 8, 9, and 10 games. It's going to be a process. It's going to be ugly. At times it's going to be ugly. But we are trending in the right direction. To get what we want to get to, we need players like you. That was the message they were giving for the last year and a half. And it's working. You see it working. Like you look at the fact that National Signing Day is probably a little under a month away, and Mike Norvell threw a lot of his eggs in one basket by having all these guys coming to this game with us not fully knowing what type of product was going to be pushed out to the field. That was one hell of a risky move, and it paid off handsomely for them. And a lot of fans wanted to hear about commitment news that night. No, that's not what this was built up for. This was more one of those things whereas, if we're being honest, most of these kids already know where they want to go to school, right? And I'm not just talking about kids who are at the game. I'm just mean prospects in general. If you're a recruit, there's a more than great chance that you know where you want to go. This did one of two things. It either solidified in those kids' mind that this is where I want to be, or those kids went home having a lot to think about. Because the package Florida State was able to put together for that entire weekend for those kids, all centered around the football game itself, people, that's hard to beat. I don't give a damn what school you are. There are very, very few schools who can provide the environment of a Miami versus Florida State game at Doak Campbell. I'm not going to say it's unmatched, but goddamn, it's top 10, maybe even top 5. And if you are on the fence, and I don't think a lot of kids are on the fence about stuff like this. They have an idea, but if you were this late in the process and you were still scratching your head about weighing this team versus weighing that team, Florida State made your decision a whole lot easier, one way or the other. But I'm going to assume the impression they made was a positive one, because you get engulfed in it's kind of hard not to just become a fan at that moment. It's kind of hard to not just be a part of the pageantry and everything that goes along with being part of a rival like that. Like I mentioned before, you got guys who said, "Hey, I went to this game, or I went to that game," and it's just the environment stuck with me. Like I still remember the visitor list for a Clemson game a few years ago, and I remember without even having to read or watch any type of video about the recruits' reaction from it, I knew it. They blew it out of the park. Regardless of what goes on around the official visit or the unofficial visit, just being at that game, how do you not want to be part of something that electrifying? It creates memories that stay with you for the rest of your life. Mike Norvell putting all those eggs in that Miami basket, we're going to be talking about this for a while, people. We're going to be talking about this for a while. Once all the dust settles and we're able to see if number one, Florida State can hold on to the guys they have now, and number two, they're able to bring in more people who they are in the running for, we're going to point back to this game. And hopefully we'll be able to say this is what started the resurgence of Florida State, beating a rival. They didn't just beat anybody. They beat a rival. Ain't no probably to it. Miami is a bigger rival than Clemson and Florida. They beat their biggest rival, and the recruiting eyes, the recruiting, the eyes of the recruiting world were on that game. You had everybody watching that game because there were so many recruiting implications tied to that football game. Florida State did themselves a hell of a service by going out there, and shout out to everybody who were part of it, who sat in the stands, everybody who made that game. I'm at home watching the game, and I felt like I was right there, just strictly based off of the crowd reaction, hearing the war chant, all these things that come with going to a Florida State football game. These people were able to see it up close and in person. And it's one thing to hear about it. When you're there, you probably can't even hear yourself think. So, like I said, man, I think this game was important for a lot of reasons, but I think we're not going to see how important this game was until a few months down the line. I think we are really itching to see what type of football team we truly have, and I don't think you're able to answer those questions in one night of football. Let's see how they play next week, and then we can talk about the week after. Let's see how they finish at recruiting. Because I personally believe, especially with the things I've been hearing from the people who I've been conversing with, that game put Florida State in prime position for a lot of primetime players. And you know what? I'm not going to get off into it. Anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you for pressing the play button. As always, you can reach me at Twitter at the Hot Seat 19. You can reach me on Instagram at the Hot Seat 19. Continue to get in those comments. Like, share, subscribe. Please like, please share, please subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel, and I can do those things by you all helping me out by just liking, sharing, and subscribing. But until next time, you all are officially off the hot seat. Y'all be good.